mas obviamente não estaria a ser honesto, não estaria a ser, enfim, honesto do ponto de vista, a minha ética pessoal e profissional não me permitiria fazê-lo.
Nem o CFA
Na realidade, durante o ano, eu tive, inclusive, o Pedro chegou a participar em sessões em que eu disse algumas coisas sobre o que estava a acontecer, ali de volta de maio, e nessa altura eu referi variedíssimas vezes que, ou seja, a minha posição, que era otimista no início do ano, transformou-se numa posição pessimista depois, ao longo do ano. Portanto, daí o facto disto ser um paradoxo.
Claro.
Dito isto, não vou dizer que isto foi sorte, porque, assim, neste mundo profissional, quando nós erramos, também não gosto de dizer que é por azar, da mesma maneira agora que acertei também não vou dizer que foi sorte, mas vou usar antes o termo, foi, enfim, pura coincidência, mera coincidência.
Muito bem.
Em relação à previsão propriamente dita, eu acho que aquilo que eu acho que posso tirar de mais, enfim, mesmo de lição para o futuro, porque é que eu fiz esta previsão no início, eu perguntei hoje ao Pedro em que dia é que fiz a previsão, fiz em 21 de fevereiro, e os níveis em 21 de fevereiro eram 3.340. Portanto, eu fiz uma previsão para 3.715, quer dizer que há aqui um crescimento implícito na ordem dos 10, 11%. 10, 11% não é muito, quer dizer, 10, 11% é um crescimento razoável. Nós estávamos ainda em finais de fevereiro, quer dizer, o tema do vírus já estava cá, mas só para que nos recordemos, na altura, não se sabia sequer nesta altura se o vírus se podia haver contágio de homem para homem. Portanto, julgava-se que o vírus pudesse ser apenas uma questão local do ano, na China, e, portanto, não havia sequer a perspectiva de que isto pudesse, de repente, passar para outros países, como, entretanto, começou a acontecer. De maneira que a previsão 10, 11% assentava bem em alguns parâmetros que eu tinha aqui. Essencialmente era a taxa de crescimento prevista dos earnings rondava os 8%. Os múltiplos nesta altura não eram muito elevados, sobretudo não eram nem sequer comparáveis com os níveis de agora. Falávamos em PERs na casa dos 21 nesta altura, PERs atuais naquela altura com os earnings atuais, com earnings prospectivos seriam na casa dos 17, 18 PERs, portanto muito mais razoáveis. Depois nós temos que entender isto na sequência do que tinha sido o ano 2019. Portanto, o ano 2019 tinha sido um ano de grande turbulência via guerra comercial, comércio internacional, e nós fechávamos o ano 2019 com perspectivas de que alguns dos dois riscos em concreto, o Brexit e a questão do acordo fase 1, tinha sido, quer um quer outro, tinham sido de alguma maneira resolvidos. O acordo de fase 1 China-Estados Unidos ocorreu em janeiro, e o Brexit, tínhamos tido a vitória do Johnson nas eleições, e portanto tudo indicava que íamos ter finalmente um acordo, pelo menos um princípio de acordo para o Brexit, relativamente simples, e isso retirava alguma incerteza. Portanto, a ideia era, vamos ter aqui um crescimento mais elevado, e já agora, finalmente, muito importante, a Fed vinha de 3 cortes de taxas de juros. A Fed tinha começado a cortar juros em meados de 2019, tinha feito 3 insurance cuts, e, portanto, a previsão aqui, a minha percepção aqui é de que muito dificilmente a Fed iria reverter estas descidas de taxas e, portanto, o ambiente mesmo em termos de política monetária era mais acomodatício e, como tal, as perspectivas eram melhores, quer em termos de crescimento, quer mesmo para ações. Portanto, foi basicamente assim que eu baseei as minhas previsões, é tão simples quanto isso, a taxa de crescimento de 10%, nada de especial. Agora, como eu referi, ao longo do ano fui ficando bastante pessimista e eu acho que a principal lição, e já agora, enfim, também aqui uma última nota conclusiva, antes de passar a vez aos colegas, também para as outras perspectivas, aqui a questão é que como é que nós chegamos a um ponto final exatamente idêntico dentro de uma narrativa completamente distinta. Nós estamos com avaliações absolutamente elevadas e eu acho que isto é um desafio adicional para nós CFAs. Eu já tinha dito isto outro dia ao Pedro, o Pedro estava muito entusiasmado o Pedro Barata estava muito entusiasmado quando o Standard & Poor's estava em 3.200, portanto presumo que agora o Pedro esteja ali inchado com 3.800. Eu acho sinceramente que nós temos aqui nós como CFAs temos aqui uma responsabilidade adicional perante estes níveis, porque é um ambiente perigoso, os níveis estão excessivamente elevados, estamos num ambiente que eu acho que é um ambiente tipicamente de bolha, muito semelhante até à bolha tecnológica de 99. Claro que nós, enfim, neste momento as circunstâncias são completamente diferentes, como é óbvio, mas em termos de níveis não são, e há muitos sinais semelhantes, e portanto eu acho que nós como analistas financeiros certificados temos nas nossas recomendações, nas nossas decisões, inclusive nos sítios onde estamos a trabalhar, para quem esteja a trabalhar nestas áreas, temos aqui uma responsabilidade adicional de, pelo menos, alertar para os riscos que neste momento existem para o Standard & Poor's, em particular, que é o mercado que está mais sobreavaliado, mas para o mercado acionista como um todo.
Mas depois vês, se calhar depois vês os amigos, como eu experiencio isso, amigos que nunca mexeram no mercado, nunca meteram um euro no mercado de ações, que agora têm a ilusão de que o mercado só sobe e sentem-se uns génios dos mercados e pensam, a malta profissional anda aqui a cobrar por este trabalho.
Exatamente, aliás, por isso é que eu acho que nós temos aqui uma responsabilidade naquilo que nos compete de alertar para isto e é efetivo. Aliás, esse foi um dos fatores, aliás, esse é um sinal de que estamos numa bolha, precisamente.
Muito bem, João, muito obrigado e parabéns outra vez pelo teu acerto paradoxal.
Obrigado.
Agora, a Hilda, 10 anos em Portugal. Estamos a falar também aqui de um indicador curioso que fechou o ano muito pertinho de zero e cujas nossas previsões deste conjunto de colegas que fizeram estes forecasts, se os podemos chamar assim, variavam. I'm sorry, I should speak in English because I just forgot. I was saying that the range of our predictions was very high also in this indicator. Although the 10-year yield for the Portuguese government debt closed near zero, we have a range of predictions from minus 0.5 to plus 1.5. This one very, very optimistic. Well, the person that got it right said 0.05, and someone not or someone that has the microphone on. If you do not speak, please just turn off the microphone because I'm listening to myself, and we get some feedback. I was saying that the person that got it the most right got a 6.38% difference from the reality at the 31st of December, and this person was Paulo Pacheco. Paulo, are you there still?
I'm here. Hello, everyone.
So tell me in Portuguese or in English as you wish. How did we went from, let's say, 8 years ago? You have yields above 10%. Now we have zero, and even yesterday we had some new debt in the market with a 9-year maturity debt with a negative yield. Tell me what role can this kind of investments, this kind of assets have in a portfolio, being it institutional or individual, when you get for sure zero or negative return if you hold it to maturity.
Yeah, okay. First, it is unbelievable for a country that was rescued in 2011 and less than a decade later, Portugal issued yesterday a new 10-year benchmark with a negative rate, which is unbelievable. Sometimes we think that the markets are not rational at all. Maybe the investors are not perceiving the Portugal and the other issuers risk. But Miguel, it's difficult to have this asset class in a client's portfolios, because they constantly asking you why you are putting some instruments in the portfolios that they don't pay anything. So we as a CFA, we have the duty to explain to clients that investing is an act of above everything, a diversification process. We should think that in the long term we need to diversify, and that is it. I think it's impossible to think and to bet every year and be right in most of the asset classes and in respective instruments. So it's, for me, investing is a process of diversification, long-term horizon, and be patient and confident in our decisions, and avoid buy and selling every time without any new or without anything that could change or could put in risk your prior decisions. But it's easy, but it is difficult to remain in your place and avoid make wrong decisions. It's not easy.
Paul, congratulations.
Thank you.
You were right. You were right. Let's go forward then. Now we're going to the 10-year yield in Germany. So we're looking at the risk-free reference for the European debt investments. So risk is a matter of certainty or uncertainty. So in truth, if you invest with a 10-year horizon in a German debt, you'll get minus 0.57% of return for sure, guaranteed. Again, the range of predictions was very high. We have an average of relatively close to the reality, but we have predictions from minus 1.5 to 0.5, and the best estimate was very, very close to the reality, minus 0.585%, and it was done by José Catalão. José Catalão, tell me how you got there with, as João was saying before, with such different circumstances, how you got to your prediction. What was in your mind in February, and what do you see it's reality nowadays?
Sure. Similar to other asset classes, probably most of them, any guess at this time would be just funny, because probably in March, end of March or in April, my guess would be completely different for most asset classes. For this asset class, what I thought was basically, of course, it's one of the let's say safest asset classes, one of the most stable. So what I tried to do was to point exactly or very, very close to the value it was at that moment. This is to say that I expected the yield not to change that much, but still I pointed a little bit below, because I was expecting the stimulus would continue to be present.
You were right.
All the stimulus to the economy. I still expect, well, now it's easy to expect stimulus, of course, but let's say in the beginning of 2020, I was not expecting the stimulus to end so soon. Not even now, of course. And so I pointed a little bit below the bullseye, and apparently the bullseye meaning the yield at that moment, and apparently I got there.
So congratulations, and I guess your reasoning was right in every way, despite the stimulus being much bigger than expected because of the pandemic. Well then, going forward, the exchange rate euro US dollar. Here we had a much smaller range of predictions from 1 to 119. So a little bit range bound would be if you look at the behavior of this exchange rate in the last few years. Although very far from the maximums and minimums that we have historically. Although the dollar did depreciate a bit in the year, and it closed the year in a minimum against the euro. The best estimate was the highest estimate, and it was 2.56% below the reality. And this estimate was done by Gonçalo Garcia. Gonçalo, tell me what, as asked your colleagues before, what changed? What was your mind in February when you did this prediction, and how it will change along the year?
Sure. Thank you, Miguel. It was surprising to me to notice that Mayo was the highest of them all, and I didn't know it was such a wild guess back then. But I also have to admit that having foreseen it more or less correctly, it was a guess. It was but economists would like to call it a forecast, but it was just a guess. So basically, my reasoning was mostly backed by the fact that historically, the US dollar has been showing a very strong mean reversion behavior. So 1 year ago, it was close to parity. It was at 1.06 or 9, and since then it has reverted quite a bit. Nowadays, it's much closer to its historical mean, and we can see it's roughly at 120. And 15 years ago, it was also at this value, and it has been hovering around these values ever since then. Of course, it fluctuates with economic and macro flows, and during the stress of the coronavirus. In March, it appreciated quite a bit because its US dollar is still seen as safer than other currencies. But as the stimulus and the economic or financial conditions improved, it devalued a bit against the euro.
Sure. Congratulations for your
thank you
wild guess. You got it almost right. And the next asset, it's the very, very famous store of value asset, namely gold. I always liked that idea that someone said before, I guess Warren Buffett or something like that, that all the gold that was mined in the world fits in a cube with 25 meters aside. And that's just as an illustration. I went to look at, and the Tower of Belém is 30 meters high, and Tower of Clérigos is 75. So it's a relatively small, let's say, it would be a relatively small building. The estimates went from 1,200 to 2,200. And the person that got it right was almost on the bullseye, with less than 1% difference, with a prediction of 1,877. The year closed, the gold closed the year at 1,893, although since then it got a little bit higher. And the winner on this asset is Pedro Antunes. Pedro Antunes, are you there? I guess not.
He's not there. Not
No?
there, so.
Okay, if he arrives, he'll have the chance to speak a little bit. And we'll go forward then for the I guess the last one, Bitcoin. It's maybe the most controversial asset, if we can call it that. It could be a whole theme for us to discuss in some future event of CFA Society. And I have this chance to say or to bring to light a recent research produced from the Research Foundation from the CFA Institute that is very factual. It goes deep in all the facts about Bitcoin, and doesn't compromise, is not very opinionative, is very focused on the facts. So if you want to check it out, it's in our latest newsletter, and you can also look in the website of Research Foundation from the CFA Institute. It's very good. I read it all, and it's very good. It's very deep. The controversy of this pseudo asset, if you can call it that, it's so much that we had predictions from almost 3,000 to 23,000, and the reality was much above that. It's impressive. So the highest was, as I said, 23,000, which is the closest guess to the price that Bitcoin in US dollars that Bitcoin closed the year, which was 29,000. And 1 week after, it would be very different. 1 week before, the same. And this best estimate was 20% below the reality. And the person that got it right, so the very bullish Bitcoiner of CFA Society in Portugal, it's João Neves. João Neves, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here, Miguel. How are you doing?
Please tell me your rationale. We don't have time to go deep on this subject, but tell me what.
No, and especially because it's based on a proprietary model that I cannot disclose with you.
Okay.
Otherwise, I would have the biggest pleasure.
But if we pay, guys, would you disclose?
Thank you so much for the initiative. It was a complete punt, honestly. I mean, the main idea was based on the accommodative policy of central banks to continue, and I think this can be applied to every single asset we discussed so far, and that's where the assets are trading. But I've said 23,000, as I could have said 43,000, to be honest. I wouldn't be surprised for this to go again 300% up, or very close to where it was at the beginning of 2020. Yeah.
Sure. I won't ask you for your predictions for 2021 because it will be in the 2021 forecast event. So
couldn't disclose either.
And you couldn't disclose because of your proprietary model. Okay. So perfect. Congratulations. So we got to the last one, and this year we did another calculation to get to the master forecaster, the one that's most right most of the time. Although each one of you won in each one of these assets, there's one person that got it the most right in all the assets, and this person, and this person was José Catalão again. José, can you say some words now about being the master forecaster of 2020 of CFA Society Portugal?
Sure. I'm not sure who wrote it, but when Pedro called me to tell me this, I just remember about this guy who wrote that if you put a monkey trying to pick stocks, the monkey will probably be better than you. So if you guys try to pick the right value for each index or each asset, well, I'm the monkey. So, of course, I'm not better than any one of you here. So well, this is, as you said, funny most of all. But still, it is. It's a funny thing to know that that I was the guy that got it less wrong in general.
Sure.
Most,
And you, next, if it would be last year, you deserve a bigger cup than every one of us. But this year, I'm sorry, you have this recognition. This small
I'll take a
recognition.
picture of the screen.
Sure, do it. Okay, so Pedro, do you want to say anything?
I don't know if someone want to comment something about the market or other things. It's more than welcome. So feel free for that. It's the Q&A session at the moment.
I don't, maybe you want to ask to the major forecaster, which is the one that got it less wrong.
Yeah.
Okay, if not, many thanks to all. Congratulations to the winners. During the week and so on, Susana from CFA Society Portugal will be publishing the winners in our social networks and so on. It was a fun game. We'll do it again next month. No, Pedro?
Yeah. So in February, it's when we will ask the estimation. And expecting next year we can do this live event because it's much more funny live than online, but it's the way it is.
Start oiling your proprietary models and your prediction Excels, and we'll talk during the year in several of these events, and maybe, as Pedro says, next year we'll be live face to face, drinking a glass of wine and talking about your predictions. Many thanks.
Let's include
Bye-bye.
Tesla next year. Let's include Tesla.
Let's include
year.
Tesla.
Let's see what people think.
29,000.
Thank you.
Bye bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.